Morning, ma'am.
Hello. Hello. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. We'll just wait for 2 more minutes and then we'll start, ma'am.
Okay.
Good morning, Amita ma'am.
Hello. Hello.
Good morning.
Amita, ma'am, she is our principal, Madam Jyoti Gill.
Hello. How are you?
Hello, ma'am. Looking forward to have a nice presentation with you.
Oh,
This topic really going to affect the mass in today's context.
well, thanks to Mekla, I was able to connect with Meera, and that is how we are here.
Yes, ma'am.
Right early at 8 o'clock in the morning, October 8th. It's still October 7th where I live.
Yeah, good morning, ma'am. Mekla here. Yeah. How are you, ma'am?
Good, good, good.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, we are
watching
waiting
the-
for your presentation. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. The Pence, Mike Pence and Kamala Harris debate must have just gotten over at 9:30.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so should we start, ma'am?
Meera, we can have a warming up session with madam regarding what exactly conservation means. We can start with that till that time before the presentation starts.
Okay, but meanwhile, should I give the introduction and everything, or should we wait for more people to
No,
come?
that you start a formal session after you get more
Okay.
login. But in that time, just in general, we can have a discussion on conservation with madam. What exactly, ma'am? Please.
Well, I'm going to present on Ramjanambhoomi, and I'm going to talk about the future of Ramjanambhoomi and why it is so important, to think about the site as a heritage site, not just a religious site. And so, when when a site has heritage as big as Ramjanambhoomi has, conservation is very important. So, I'm going to argue against developing it as the biggest, temple in the whole world, and make a push and make a push for conservation of features, individual features, even trees and water bodies and hillocks at the site.
Ma'am, just one question. Like in general, when we talk about conservation, what are those parameters which one should look into? That yes, this should be conserved, and this we can go away with. Like those, that is a very fine hairline where we come, because everything on this earth is to need to be conserved, whether it is natural, whether it is like the cultural system, the way we are starting right now. But there is a fine hairline where we have to ultimately, at times, as a conservationist, decide if this needs to be conserved and if this is okay if we go away. So, what are those factors you recommend that this is that hairline? Beyond this, it is either this side or that side. Can you just some light on that kind of parameters?
So
With two broader questions.
conservation is not preservation, because preservation, at least in the Western way of looking at historical artifacts, is preserving them in the found state. But conservation should be management of change, and landscapes are, dynamic entities. They are not objects. They have an ecology, and they are shaped by culture. And we know that cultures also cannot be frozen. Cultures are changing. But about the past, what we want to retain from the past, what we call as heritage, we need to see how we can manage change in a way that there is not a loss of what we value from the past.
Ma'am, could you just enhance the things, because as ASI just do the conservation of monument and just decorating with the landscaping, and still we are following some old policies. So how to, you know, reinvent, and we can just change this attitude towards towards the Indianization, or towards our culture. And cultural landscaping is more appropriate as per today's debate, and the people are doing some research on that. So would you like to do some uh, highlight on this point? How can we uh, change this mindset through student or through education? That will be great. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a very good point. ASI is the official body that is responsible for preserving the monuments of India. And monuments, as we know, are grand buildings. And ASI is not very well equipped to think about what is around the monuments and between the monuments. And so, yes, they have a horticulture division, and usually they want to develop a kind of a cordon sanitaire, clean the area around the monument and cover it with a lawn and shrub. But that erases uh, the past, because then the area is seen as a blank slate. And so we have to get past, this monument as object or monument in a garden kind of thinking, and start thinking about heritage sites as a complex of uh, buildings, of structures, not just big monuments, but also smaller structures, gateways and walls and streets. And so when we expand our thinking beyond one building, beyond a monument, to a heritage precinct or a heritage district, we begin to understand how important it is uh, to think about the site. And again, I mean site not as something static, entity, but a site that has got layers and layers of history, a sites which are living and are used by people. There are communities living there. There are, large number of visitors. In this case of sacred sites, large number of pilgrims. So these are, these are very complex places, complex sites, and we have to have we have to have appropriate legislation which will regulate change. We need to bring about awareness on the part of those who are living on the site that they are living in the midst of history, and that uh, their needs could be met, while at the same time not destroying the ambience of the historic site. So there's a lot of work to be done in South Asia. I edited a volume on cultural landscapes of South Asia in 2017, and we looked at 6 different countries of South Asia, and we saw that all of them faced similar problems. And I think cultural landscape is an appropriate framework for thinking about heritage conservation, because as I said, it means looking at monuments, but also at the spaces between and around them.
Yes, ma'am. Truly said. And now I think we have to start with our formal session. So now I will start the formal session. I will take this formal session ahead. So good morning, all of you. So we are here for our Transcending Thursday 13, and which is focused on the cultural landscapes of India, reclaiming the contested site of Ramjanabhoomi in Ayodhya, And now I would like to welcome our esteemed guest, architect Amita Sinha. She is a former professor in the Department of Landscape Architecture at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She has taught in the Department of Architecture Regional Planning, IIT Kharagpur, Humanities and Social Sciences Department at IIT Gandhinagar. Amita Sinha ma'am is the author of Landscapes in India, Forms and Meanings, uh, which was printed by University Press of Colorado 2006 and reprinted by Asia Educational Services 2011, and Cultural Landscapes of India Imagined, Enacted and Reclaimed. Um, she is also editor of Landscapes Perceptions and co-editor of Cultural Landscapes of South Asia Studies in Heritage Conservation and Management. Her articles have been published in Landscape Journal, Journal of Landscape Architecture, International Journal of Heritage Studies, Journal of Urban Design, Studies in the History of Gardens and Design Landscapes, Architecture Plus Design, Mark Publications, and Tecton. Amita Sinha was a senior Fulbright researcher at the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage (INTEC) in Delhi 2009, and is the recipient of Fulbright Nehru Academic and Professional Excellence Award Fellowship in 2018 and 19. She has received the National Merit Award, American Society of Landscape Architects for Cultural Heritage Project on Taj Mahal, India 2001, and Environmental Design Research Association Award in 2018. On this note, I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Amita ma'am, to take this session forward. Please, ma'am.
Okay. Hello and good morning. I'm very happy to be presenting on Cultural Landscapes of India today. Thank you, Meera. Thank you, Mekla, for inviting me to do this. So today my focus is on Ayodhya, Ayodhya's heritage as it is embodied in its most famous site, Ramjanambhoomi. And it's drawn from my book, Cultural Landscapes of India, Imagined, Enacted, and Reclaimed, which will be published later this month by the University of Pittsburgh Press. So the book is about ways of seeing landscape and heritage, their enactment in spatial practices, and their conservation rooted in history, myth, culture, and ecology. Ayodhya encompasses these themes, perhaps more than any other pilgrim town in India. And today I look at Ramjanambhoomi, its place in both myth and history, and outline a design approach for its future so that the cultural heritage is preserved in a narrative landscape. We know Ramjanambhoomi has been much in news lately with the Supreme Court verdict in November 2019, paving the way for the construction of the temple at the site, which has been designed by the Ahmedabad-based Somphara architect family. But it's not clear how the site is going to be designed. Media images and walkthroughs broadcasted at the time of bhoomipujan show exhibition galleries, museum, and 360-degree amphitheater covering most of the site, and they're interspersed with generic lawns with a sprinkling of trees. The image projected is of a grand monumental complex. Now the question arises, is this vision going to preserve the heritage of the site, or is it going to be irrevocably alter it in an image of something else, a simulacrum? So I propose an alternative design approach in which the temple is situated in a narrative landscape of Ram Katha, the epic story of Ram, celebrated over 2 millennia in South and Southeast Asia. Ramayana, composed by the sage Valmiki, is Adi Kavya, the very first poetic work of ancient India. And the many Ramayans in different languages and in different regions show it to have a central place in the cultural imaginary. Ram Katha is the story of our hero Ram's journey, our God, his exile from and return to Ayodhya, the trials and tribulations he faced in his rites of passage, and of his attainment of divine status as Vishnu Avatar. The collective memory of the divine king is celebrated in texts and their enactments, in dramaturgical traditions, in visual representations, and artistic productions of every kind. But above all, it is sustained by places, actual sites where Ram is believed to have been born, places of his wanderings, and where he ruled as a king. And all of these constitute narrative landscape, an allegorical one, symbolic of the person and the deeds.
Ma'am,
So, yes, Ramjanambhoomi. Yes.
you wanted to share your screen now or later?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is the screen not visible?
No, ma'am.
Is it visible now?
Not yet, ma'am. Once you stop sharing and again you can do it present now and click on the entire screen and then share.
Okay.
Ma'am, your microphone is off.
Is the screen visible now?
Not yet, ma'am.
Okay, what is it that I'm not doing?
Ma'am, you are just follow the this present now, then your entire screen. Then you have to click on the screen which is visible to you on in window, and then click on the share. Yes, 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 ma'am. It is visible.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. It is visible, ma'am.
So as I was saying,
And ma'am, just hide that notification bar which is below your screen. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
all good.
Yes, yes, ma'am. All good.
Okay, so Ramjanambhoomi, as I said, has been in news, much in news lately. But it's not clear how the site is going to be designed, and we have to be very careful whether the vision that is projected in the media of a grand temple, whether it's going to preserve the heritage of the site, or is it going to irrevocably alter it in an image of something else, a simulacrum. So I propose an alternative approach in which the temple is situated in a narrative landscape of Ram Katha. And as I was saying, Ram Katha is the story of Ram's many journeys, his exile from and return to Ayodhya. And the collective memory of the divine king is celebrated in texts and visual representations, but it's above all sustained by places, actual sites where he's believed to have lived. So Ramjanambhoomi within this narrative landscape holds a very special significance as the site of Vishnu's descent on earth. I propose that in envisioning the future of Ramjanambhoomi, it should be considered both as a place and image, a place of birth and domicile, and an image of Ram and the attributes of ideal, just, and compassionate ruler. So I examine in this presentation how the place and image are linked, each taking on the character of the other. So Ramjanambhoomi is a heritage landscape. And heritage, what is valued from the past, is constituted of myths and history and places that anchor them. This process of imprinting myths on the lie of the land produces the cultural landscape that is reproduced where the legends are enacted. Ayodhya and Ramjanambhoomi have been lost and found repeatedly in the past. Sites have been reclaimed by Hindu rulers when they were abandoned and lost to memory. Now, scholars such as Hans Bakker tell us that Ayodhya as we now know it evolved only in the last 800 to 1000 years, and as a result of the growth of Rama cult and the rise of the Bhakti movement in medieval India. Ayodhya of ancient India presumably is lost to history, but preserved in cultural memory as an imagined landscape. Archaeological evidence and travelers' accounts identify the location of Ayodhya as the ancient Saket city, a marketplace town at the junction of two important routes, the north-south Shravasti, Pratishthan, and east-west Rajgriha, Varanasi, Shravasti, Taxila. It was part of the Koshala kingdom in 6th, 5th century BC, ruled by Prasenjit from Shravasti, as is mentioned in Jain texts and Buddhist Jatakas. Saket enters the pages of history as Ayodhya when Gupta kings became the devotees of Vishnu and moved their capital from Patliputra to Ayodhya in the 5th century. And it lost its preeminence to Kannauj in the 6th century when the Gupta Empire was invaded by Huns. With the rise of Ghadwalas in the 11th century, temples were built again in Ayodhya, including one at Ramjanambhoomi, and Ayodhya's importance as a pilgrim center began to grow. It became the target of Islamic iconoclasm, beginning with Salar Masood's invasion in 1034, followed by that of Muhammad Ghori in 1198. And then Ayodhya becomes part of the Islamic Sultanate in 1226. It was ruled by the Sharkis after 1394, and then by the Lodhis between 1479 and 1526. Babur had a mosque built at Ramjanabhoomi in 1528 at the instigation of a local Muslim Pir, Fazal Abbas. And then Ayodhya was then ruled by the Nawabs who actually had their palaces in Faizabad, and then they later moved them to Lucknow. Now, the presence of Ram Chabutra and Sita Rasoi in the outer courtyard of Babri Masjid in the late 19th century attested to Hindu attempts to reclaim Ramjanambhoomi, which intensified when colonial rule began and the reign of Shia Nawabs ended. In 1949, a group of devotees broke into the mosque and placed the Ram deity below the main dome. The reclamation of Ramjanambhoomi was taken up in earnest in 1984 by the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, and the foundation stone of a new Janmsthan temple was laid in the Shilanyas ceremony in November 1989. The Rath Yatra of BJP leader Ram Krishna Advani in 1990 brought in its wake civic unrest And on 6th December 1992, Karsevaks destroyed Babri Masjid with mattocks, axes, and rods. So land was acquired after the masjid was demolished, about 2.77 acres, and then litigation began on who owns the site. Hindu claim rested on the faith-based premise that this is the actual birthplace of Lord Ram and devotees should be able to commemorate his descent on earth, while Muslims argued that the mosque had stood at the site for 464 years. Its destruction proved the failure of the state in protecting heritage and ensuring that the Muslim community in Ayodhya had a place to worship. Among the relics recovered from the demolished ruins of Babri Masjid is the famous Hari Vishnu inscription dated to 12th century and written in Devanagari script. It's engraved on a 5 feet long, 3 feet wide, and 2.5 inches thick slab of buff sandstone. It describes the Hari Vishnu temple built in the temple city of Ayodhya in Saket Mandal. And line 19 describes Vishnu destroying Bali and the 10-headed Dashanana. It mentions the temple as being built by Meghsut, a vassal of Govind Chandra, the Garhwal ruler. Now, Ramkot was excavated by A.K. Narayan in 1969-70 and B.B. Lal in 1975-76, and it showed the presence of black polished ware, indicating an urban settlement dating back to the end of the 6th or the first half of 5th century BC. Excavations in June 1992 in the 2.7 acre of land leveled after the demolition of Babri Masjid unearthed 40 sculptural and architectural remnants. 14 black stone pillars with carvings indicating a style datable to 11th century were used as spolia in the Babri Masjid. ASI undertook further archaeological excavations in March 2003 by digging 90 trenches in and around the area of the demolished mosque as directed by the Lucknow bench of the Allahabad High Court. The excavations revealed 7 strata, the earliest dating back to 1st millennium BC. Stone and brick construction was evident in the Shunga period, that is 2nd to 1st BC, in the Kushan period, 1st to 3rd CE. Terracotta figurines and copper coins from the Gupta era, 4th to 6th centuries were found. The 5th period, that is the 7th to 10th CE, were indicated by a circular brick shrine with a water chute. The 6th, that is 11th to 12th CE, by a 50-meter long wall, and the 7th period, 12th to 16th, by a 50 by 30 meter pillared hall over which Babri Masjid was constructed. So the place of Rama's birth is a site of hierophany, where Vishnu took avatar in human form in the Treta Yuga. Its sacred energy is embodied in the Swambhu deity that, with the ritual of Pran Pratishta, is believed to be a living entity to be worshipped with reverence and devotion. The place's deity has not only great powers, but it is also a juridical entity as recognized by Indian courts since colonial times. The deity is considered to be a minor, Ramlala, whose interests can be represented in lawsuits over disputed sites. Ramlala Virajman, child Ram seated, is a place deity. The Supreme Court of India on November 9, 2019 ruled in favor of building the Ramjanambhoomi Temple at the disputed site. The court ruled that the archaeological evidence showed that Babri Masjid was constructed above the remains of an un-Islamic structure, and the Muslim parties had failed to establish exclusive possession since Hindus had worshipped Ram inside the mosque. The court appeared to be drawing upon both myth and history in adjudicating the case. In this way of seeing, the site is a representational space of Ram's birth and his continuing presence invoked through rituals. And it is a space of representation, an archive of material artifacts that establish a chronology of site occupation. The Ramjanambhoomi Temple is going to be built on 10 acres, and the remaining 59 acre site planning becomes highly significant. It's not clear how the site is going to be designed. The site plan published in India Today magazine does not show any sacred features or existing temples. It appears as if the site is blank canvas with no history of its own. Now, the site planning is hugely significant in symbolically representing the place deity or the place's person. While Ramlila will be worshipped in an iconic form in the temple built according to traditional Vastu principles in the Nagara style of architecture, how will the surroundings reflect his character and personality? So here are three visual representations. In the Ram Darbar, he is the ruler of Ayodhya, presiding over his court with his wife Sita, his brothers and Hanuman in attendance. His kingdom is Ram Raja, where everyone is healthy, happy, and prosperous, over which he rules as a compassionate and just king. He is Maryadapurshottam, the man who achieved divinity, a supreme man whose behavior epitomized honor and righteousness. As the warrior Ram, who vanquished demons, especially the powerful ruler of Lanka, Ravan, is invariably seen in a warrior pose with a bow, a world conqueror, a slayer of evil on this earth. In this 18th century Chamba painting, he is the tapasvi Raja, the king who was an ascetic. His renunciate persona exemplified by his 14 years of exile in the forest, by his education in the ashram of his guru Vashisht, and in the sojourn with sage Vishwamitra as the protector of Brahmin sages from the demons of wilderness. So the roles that he played as Vishnu's avatar on earth, king, warrior, renunciate, are multiple facets of his personality, each associated with the landscape. Ayodhya's Darbar, the battlefield, and the Tapovan. And the iconic representations are of the person as well as the place. He is, however, incomplete without Sita, his Shakti. Known as Siyavar Ram, he is who he is because of her. He won the princess of Videha when he broke Shiva's bow. He vanquished evil personified by Ravan, who had abducted her, and thus acquired the divine status in human form. He, the dark sky god, is complemented perfectly by the fair earth goddess, and together they rule this earthly kingdom of Ayodhya, exemplary in their love and devotion to each other and in their adherence to the royal dharmic code. So Ram, the just, compassionate and virtuous ruler, and his Ram Raja, an utopian state whose subjects follow their dharma, are ideals to be emulated in all times to come. The settings of this allegorical tale, Ayodhya and the larger landscape of exile, I call them archetypal because they are the basis of evolution and transformation of actual sites in certain images. And this is a historic process only partially documented in accounts and in Puranic lore. So the city and forest have always been imagined in opposition to each other in the epics. And Ramayana tells us much about the ancient Indic attitudes towards nature. So nature is a cultural construct. It is how you imagine to be, but it's not a monolithic concept. It has different facets. Sentient nature has sacred and profane dimensions, and it permits the experience of a transcendent realm in this world. There is a duality of profane wilderness and sacred tapovan. Natural Edenic settings and forests are reproduced in city gardens. The dense trackless aranya is transformed into the open pastoral landscape of tapovan by the presence of sages. The lush natural forest or Van is for kings and nobles to hunt. Pramodvan is a forest for engaging in merrymaking, and it is the opposite of wilderness. Here, natural bounties are in contrast with the trackless, barren waste of aranya, of the desert or the jungle. And Vatika is an enclosed garden representing a highly ordered and perfected nature. So Dandkaranya means a jungle of punishment, of Dand, and legend has it that Ikshvaku king had 100 sons, the youngest of whom was called Danda because he was worthless, and it was thought he would receive punishment. So he ruled from this capital city of Madhubanta over a vast region in east central India, today identified with the Bastar district in Chhattisgarh. He was punished by sage Shukracharya for having raped his daughter Araja. The sage's curse laid to waste the kingdom of Dandak, and it turned into a dense wild forest. Ramayana describes Dandakaranya to be the abode of demons, pishachas, ghost, goblins. And here in this painting, we see Tarakan, the demoness Taraka, being killed by Ram and Lakshman. Scattered in the seemingly impenetrable forest are islands of sanctity, ashrams, the vanguard of Indo-Aryan civilization. Established by rishis, they're instrumental in bringing the order of civilized society with its dharmic values into the primeval chaos of wilderness, and they form a striking contrast. Here, psychological and physical dangers are banished. The inherent fear of evil in wilderness is conquered by the moral force of sages. Wild beasts and birds are gentle. The ashram gives shelter to all. Trees bear flowers and fruit in profusion. Nature is benevolent. Fragrant breezes and cool waters make the ashram a very attractive sylvan setting. Its pleasant surroundings remove one's tiredness and provide a peaceful environment with freedom from worldly distractions. So the ashram is a place of spiritual force. Ram, Sita, and Lakshman in their exile visit and live in many such ashrams, and here they meet famous sages and imbibe their teachings. So Chitrakoot and Panchvati are natural gardens of great beauty. Here Mother Nature is bountiful. There's an abundance of fruits, vegetables, and edible roots. Mandakini River flows below Chitrakoot Hill, in the slopes of which is Ram and Sita's leaf hut. In Valmiki Ramayan's Aranyakant, the Book of the Forest, the pearl-like waters of Mandakini, with its flower-strewn stone banks, swaying trees on the hill, and garlands of flower enchant Ram, making his exile feel like an elixir. The lyrical beauty of Chitrakoot brings great happiness to Sita as she and Ram grow closer in nature's bosom. This is a period of extended honeymoon for them, as Iravati Karve says. In fact, there is a Pramod today in the banks of Mandakini River in Chitrakoot, and it's a historic garden built by the ruler of Reva, Vishwanath Pratap Singh Dev. And there is actually a tree called Putrajeep or Putrada, where childless couples ask for a child from the gods. Vatika, an enclosed garden, is modeled after the one. The urban culture of ancient India incorporated features of the natural picturesque river valleys, pastoral settings, tree groves in a savanna-like landscape. And these medieval paintings show the four-square or charbagh archetype, but what distinguishes these Vatikas from the Indo-Islamic garden is the presence of a shrine. Sita and Ram first meet in a garden in Janakpuri. Ram and Lakshman had come to pick flowers, and Sita had come with a friend to worship at the goddess Gauri's shrine. It was love at first sight. In Ayodhya, Ram and Sita's palace too had an Ashok Vatika. And as Valmiki describes it, the Vatika had lotus-filled tanks graced by cranes and swans. Papaya and koil warbled sweetly. Arbors with seating punctuated the garden space. Sita sits in Ashok Vatika in Lanka in Ravan's captivity. It's a garden grove and is associated with Vidharas, that is sorrow and separation from beloved. Sita is grieving, remembering Ram and his unmatched prowess. The tree is a protecting abode in her anguish. So Ayodhya has certain topographic features which it shares with other sacred cities, such as Varanasi and Mathura. Their geography plays no small part in establishing them as sacred kshetras. These cities are located in peninsular regions surrounded by water on three sides. The ancients in India chose these locations, presence of water in swift river currents, lowland basins, and river confluences, which made it possible to consider the site as a ford, a bridge to heavens. The high plateau over the river confluences was the strategic location for forts and defensible settlements. And these sites provided a combination of natural features favored by gods of epic and Puranic mythologies. The hill river dyad constitutes a landscape archetype that developed into the structure of sacred geography in India. So in Ayodhya, the river Saryu used to flow on three sides. Now it has shifted its course, and there was actually a river, Telodaki, that used to flow in the southern direction, but it has all but disappeared. Lowland basins in the southern part which have now become kunds, while the northern part is a dense settlement, giving way to farmland in the south. Ayodhya's Kshetra is outlined and marked by footsteps of pilgrims doing the Panchkroshi Yatra. Ramkot Parikrama inside takes one around what remains of the ancient fortress of Ram. And within Ramkot is the Ramjanambhoomi site acquired by Sri Ramjanambhoomi Kshetra Trust. So this preliminary mapping of 43 sacred sites was based on fieldwork in 2018. Now, according to Ayodhya Mahatmya, Ayodhya and Saryu owe their existence to Vashisht Mani. There's another story that the eldest son of Brahma named Swambhu Manu went to his father, asked for a place to live in. Brahma took him to Vishnu, who bestowed upon him the wonderful and splendid Ayodhya built by the divine architect Vishwakarma. Now, the Panchkroshi Parikrama was first done by Ram, Sita, and Lakshman when they left for their forest exile. And in their wanderings through the forest, they covered large tracts of the subcontinent. These landscapes become an integral part of Ram Katha. For Ayodhya and Ramjanambhoomi to be a living site of Ram Katha narrative, these circumambulatory routes can be the generative tool for the landscape structure with an iconographic program. In the survey map of the 69-acre site where the temple is going to be built, we see that it's not a completely level site devoid of any traces of the past. Besides the sacred structures, this is the Ramjanambhoomi site, Sita Rasoi to its north, the Sita Koop, there is the Manas Bhavan and Anand Bhavan. There are wells and there are tanks and trees. There are 3 hillocks, Kubercan Tila, Nal Neel Tila, and Angad Tila, named after the Vanki warriors. Nal Neel, who built the Ram Setu to Lanka, Angad, who was the heir to Kishkinda kingdom and Ram's emissary. And these Tilas symbolically represent their presence in Ayodhya as guardians of Ramkot. So Ayodhya's cultural landscape, including the Ramjanambhoomi site, epitomizes events that took place outside of Ayodhya through toponyms. To the north is Sita Rasoi, a Sita's kitchen. Ram's birthplace, of course, could not be worshipped without paying homage to Sita, Mother Earth, the symbol of plenitude. And this shrine represents Shakti, or the power of the earth goddess. Sita, the one who transforms raw material into edible food. She is the source of bounties of Ram Rajya, the reign of Ram. Now, Sita's fertility and the life-sustaining powers are grounded in the landscape. Like the Shakti Peeth, where the goddess is worshipped in the form of crude stones, Sita Rasois and many Ramayan sites in India commemorate her powers in stoves, grinding stones, and rolling pins. At Chitrakoot, a Sita Rasoi is built at the top of the hill and lends its name to the peak. At Lalapur Hill, the Rasoi is in a small cave where Sita cooked for her sons during her second exile in Valmiki's ashram. There are many Sita Rasois in Narmada Valley where earth is worshipped as an omnipotent entity. Since Ramjanambhoomi is part of Ramkot, the precinct represents the city on the hill, the ancient fort from where Ram ruled over his kingdom. The palaces within this fort are residences of Dashrath and his 3 wives, and of Ram and Sita. And these sites have been reclaimed as temples built mostly in the 19th century. Kanak Bhavan, for example, was the golden palace of Ram and Sita, was built by the Queen of Orsha. Now, according to Hans Bakker, the place deities guarding the fort were Yakshas, Ajita, Madgajendra, and Bhairav, and they gave way to the monkey warriors of Ram Katha by the 16th century, paralleling the rise of worship of Ram as an incarnation of Vishnu. The eastern gateway of Ramkot is now Hanuman Gadi, where Hanuman is worshipped as the caretaker of Ayodhya when Ram left for his celestial abode. The mounts on the southwest and southeast are the Kuber Tila and the Sugriv Tila, with Nal Neel Tila and Angad Tila in between. there are other sites. There are kunds like Dantathavan Kund, where Ram and his brothers used to brush their teeth, Vibhishan Kund, Brahaspati Kund, Vashisht Kund, named after the sages. The cluster of sacred sites south of Ramkot is and largely in fields. They would have been forested. This area would have been forested before the land began to be cultivated. Mani Parvat has a Buddhist monastery. Now the site is fully claimed by Ram legends. And the Parvat is believed to have fallen when Hanuman was carrying the hill with Sanjeevani booty to Lanka. But according to Ayodhya Mahamatya, this is another legend, that Ram asked Garud to bring the hill for Sita to spend time with her companions. And Ayodhya Mahamatya describes the Ashok Vatika, where Ram and Sita spent their leisure hours, which was filled with fragrant trees and shrubs. In it was Sita Kund. So Vidya and Ganesh Kund are in the vicinity of the hill. And little further west are and south are Dashrath Kund and three other kunds named after his three wives. So Ayodhya is a mnemonic landscape, a landscape of memory, and it's replete with place legends that bring Ram and his parivar and other characters of Ram Katha into the here and now. It's a pilgrim landscape renewed by traditional practices of circumambulation, bathing in Saryu, and other worship rituals, enactment of Ramayana, and Ramjanambhoomi is an integral part of it. So as such, iconic images of Ram and places he and Sita inhabited, Tapovan, Ashok Vatika, can be reinterpreted for Ramjanambhoomi to be an allegorical landscape that will embody the rich cultural heritage of the town. Now, our concept, and I acknowledge Hina Gajjar, who has helped me in coming up with this concept and the drawings. Our concept is that there be a monumental core of the temple, which is set within a landscape park. So devotees can enter the site from the existing main road, which connects to the railway station for the south and to the bus station on the Saryu riverfront. Another entry from the northern gateway, which is closer to Hanuman Gadi. And devotees can experience the landscape moving on foot or on golf cart on a series of trails that would take them to many points of interest, where they can learn how these places are settings of Ram Katha, and they will then traverse a narrative landscape. The temple complex, the main temple, and other temples such as Sita Rasoi, Manas, and Anand Bhavans, the arrival courts with shops selling ritual items and public conveniences for devotees, these cover about 10 acres. In the remaining 59 acres, a museum, a dharamshala, a temple administrative block, cottages for the saints, staff quarters, a bhojanshala, a gaushala, parking lot, the big parking lot for 300 vehicles, as well as smaller parking lots. All of these are located on the periphery, leaving large open space for festivals, Ram Leela, and pilgrim gatherings. The landscape typology is derived from textual and visual representations, as well as historic and vernacular precedents. Van and Vatika, Medan, Sarovar, and Kund are the design components, and these landscape types are employed to recreate the narrative landscape in the Ram Katha park. So south of the temple is proposed Nakshatra Vatika. The form is the archetypal circle within a square, a mandal. 27 trees are planted in a circle symbolizing 27 nakshatras, or the constellation of stars. And this is inspired by the Nakshatra Garden in the CSIR National Chemical Laboratory in Pune, established in 2014. The trees mentioned in Ayurvedic texts are associated with nakshatras which govern human life, And in the circle of time, 27 nakshatras are distributed over 12 months and linked to zodiac signs. So in our proposal, there is another ring of lower story shrubs, a pool in the center. The circle and the square are defined by circumambulatory paths. North of Sita Rasoi, where the Bhojanshala is proposed, and north of that is an outdoor space which devotees can use, and it's designed as an Ashok Vatika, a grove of Ashok trees. The grove is planted in the 9-square mandal pattern, defined by pathways and chabutras at their intersection. Trees are planted in the sunken squares, around which are raised grassy berms with walkways. The precedent is the 16th century gardens of Orcha and other medieval Rajput gardens in which trees were planted in a geometric configuration, in this case octagonal pits. Although they were inspired by the Mughal Chaur Bagh, they were adapted for Hindi rituals of worship in groves or vatikas which had shrines in them. West of the temple, we propose a flower garden or Pushpa Vatika. It would supply flowers, popularly such as marigolds and roses, jasmine, popularly used as offering to the gods. And this Vatika is adjacent to the Bhandarghar and Koshala. The flowering shrubs are planted in long rows and accessed by pathways, longitudinal and lateral. The layout is derived from flower farms and nurseries which you see everywhere. Another precedent is the rose garden in Uttarayan, Shantiniketan, designed by Ratindranath, Rabindranath Tagore's son. Uttarayan is actually a complex of homes and gardens which was built in the early 20th century and is now a heritage site. So the existing entryway to Ramjanambhoomi site is developed into a 2-story wide road with a median in between, and close to the entry is proposed a museum and with lecture halls. The archaeological park called Durba Vatika is designed for the display of the debris of Babri Masjid and other archaeological relics that can be displayed outdoors. And the Vatika is next to Angad Chila and the Kund and pavilion. So the precedent here is Chaukhandi Park in Sarnath, where rock sculptures engraved with Buddha's teachings, the Eightfold Path, are displayed in a park next to Chaukhandi Stupa. In Durba Vatika, a spiral trail descending down to a pool of water is in the center, along which archaeological fragments can be displayed. And since these fragments were embedded below the surface in strata, the downward spiraling path would symbolize that descent and is also a counterpoint to the ascending hillock of Angad. While sacred groves have been preserved in forested areas, especially in the Western Ghats, they are rarely found in designed parkland. Again, in Uttarayan complex in Shantiniketan, there is a grove named Panchvati on the edge of a pond called Pampa Lake. And this grove is behind the largest house, Udayan, with gardens in between. Uttarayan itself is part of Vishwabharati campus, designed as a tapovan and ashram in the forest. So in the southern part of the 69-acre site, with the existing trees, tilas, and wells, which are, especially the tilas, are myth markers and vestiges of a historic landscape, depending upon how one sees them. Kuber Tila was also the site of hangings of 2 freedom fighters after the First War of Independence in 1857. So these trees and tilas are key elements in designing a narrative landscape, and they can be part of a recreated tapovan where Ram, Sita, and Lakshman spend their years in exile. These site features can be augmented with more planting, stabilizing the tilas, and a system of trail that takes the devotees to points of attraction. So in the Ram Katha Kunj, devotees can gather in small groups, but in the amphitheater, Rangshala, large numbers can be accommodated during festivals such as Ramjanambhoomi. And this is a low-lying area where a small lake or sarovar is proposed next to the Rangshala, and this could be the main source of water supply. Water doesn't have to be piped from Saryu. Next to them is a large Maidan for the annual Ram Leela festival, where Ravan, his son, and his brothers when they're burnt, can be watched by thousands. So the shaded trail meandering from the main access street would define the Maidan, connect to the circumambulatory paths around the tilas. There is also a long north-south alley of trees beginning at the temple complex and ending on the Sarovar. So Ramjanambhoomi Temple is designed according to the canon. The building traditions are strictly adhered to in every aspect of their layout, form, and ornamentation. And less clear are landscape design traditions when it comes to sacred sites. The surrounding of temple complexes in India respond to site exigencies and to pilgrim needs. Temples in Ayodhya are entered through large paved courtyards. Now, the Akshardham temple model is grandiose. It's on a monumental scale. It does not speak to the site. Its landscape design seems contrived and in position on the land, not a celebration of mythic memories. Ramjanambhoomi is a sacred site. The devotee comes to obtain darshan of Ramlala in temple and to feel the presence of Ram Sita in the surroundings. How can this anticipation be fulfilled while at the same time accommodating the needs of hundreds of thousands who will pour in once a temple is built? And I believe that a landscape park is appropriate for creating a narrative landscape of Ram Katha, a story which is deeply embedded in the collective consciousness of Hindus. Ramjanabhoomi is embedded within a cluster of sacred sites in Ramkot and beyond in Ayodhya, and it cannot be treated as a standalone, although security concerns demand careful control of few designated entries. Its scale too should respond to its context. Ayodhya is a dense urban settlement of narrow streets leading to Haveli-style temples. And this very human scale contributes to Ayodhya's religious ambience in a very significant way. Ayodhya and Ramjanambhoomi are believed to have been lost and found time and again. Place finding and place making has been a cultural imperative, a quest for divinity in person and place. The place embodies the person, the divine in human form, and his story. Ram Katha can be told in this landscape design and iconography, as I've shown today. I'm open to questions, comments.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you so much. Students, please ask your questions. Ma'am is done for her presentation. So you can ask via chat box as well, and you can ask directly to ma'am as well.
Let me ask you this. How many of you have been to Ayodhya or have visited Ramjanambhoomi, familiar with the landscape there?
Ma'am, I have not been to Ayodhya, but definitely I have heard all these stories and narratives which actually are associated with Ram and his exile of 14 years and everything. And ma'am, can we is it possible to have such sort of cultural landscapes which is kind of can connect with all those sites which are associated with Ayodhya and Ram's exile? So can we is it possible to have Ayodhya as one site and many of the sites which are associated with Ram? So can we connect all those sites and have a kind of a bigger plan or bigger associated cultural landscapes with this Ram Janmabhoomi?
I think so, yes. 69 acres, that is a lot of land. And instead of covering it, with buildings, I think it is very important that we have a narrative landscape, as I've said repeatedly. So, what will happen is that uh, other sites are already there, in the sense that the tilas are reminders of Ram's journey to the south. Uh, and what we can do is we can augment them with more features. Uh, and as I said, the design typology of Kunj, of Van, and of Vatika can be very useful in telling the story.
Yeah, ma'am. And actually, there are many parallel stories in world, in globe as well, because we have another Ayodhya at, I think, in somewhere in Thailand, right?
Yes,
So,
South Asia, all of these countries, Cambodia, Ram Katha is told, and Ayodhya is there in Thailand. Actually, there is a historic city, Ayodhya.
so how should we take all these narratives and how we can proceed it as our matlab? It can it be different than all those stories are there in Thailand or that another Eastern countries? And another question again related to this only, that how much of conservation is guided by political process and not the original theoretical basis.
So these other Ramayans, the Southeast Asian Ramayans, are actually presented in dioramas in the museum, which is on the Saryu River front. And there are many artistic productions and dance dramas of Southeast Asia that can be performed in the museum and the indoor amphitheater. I think the subcontinent, the Ramayana of the subcontinent, the places that are believed to have been visited by Ram, Sita, and Lakshman, these have a direct connection with Ayodhya. And so it is the story of Ram Rajya and the exile that needs to be told in Ramjanambhoomi. The question about cultural landscape versus political ideology. I know that Ram temple is going to be, they say, the third largest in the world. And during the Ramjanambhoomi puja celebrations, what they kept showing on the TV was this immense, monumentality, very grand vision, befitting Lord Ram. But let us not forget, that Ayodhya has a history. I mean, it has a mythology and it has a history, and it is a pilgrim town full of temples. And so, if Ramjanambhoomi is one giant, structure of temples, huge temples and museums, it does not, it does not do justice to the site. We don't know at all, about Ramkot, because all signs of Ramkot would have been obliterated, in the building of this amphitheaters and exhibition galleries. So I think that is erasing history or and substituting it with something else, Um, so that is my main concern, that that Ayodhya and its sacred sites, its kunds, its tilas, Ramjanambhoomi, these small temples, all of those should be incorporated in the vision for the future.
Yeah, ma'am, truly said. And all these pilgrim sites are also are also helping to generate all those economy within that cities, and they are also having lot of tourist pressure on that site. So, as a conservationist, what should be the take on this planning of the whole Ayodhya as a city for tourist handling or tourist capacity को handle करने के लिए?
I think that is a very question. That's a very good question. When we did a survey, Professor Shubhda Kamlapurkar and I, she's from BNCA Pune, in 2018, we surveyed a lot of pilgrims and residents too. We found that Ramjanambhoomi was not the most visited site. Actually, it was Hanuman Gadi, and then followed by Nageshwar and Ramjanambhoomi. So there are many sacred sites on Saryu riverfront, which are heavily, visited in large numbers by pilgrims, and really all these plans for developing Ayodhya, building a bypass road to straight to Janambhoomi, widening the Panchkroshi Parikrama. All of these are going to accommodate the increasing number of pilgrims. That is true, but these improvements are should be over the entire pilgrim town, and the attention is concentrated on Ramjanambhoomi only. I think by developing the Ram circuit, which actually includes Faizabad and places like Nandigram to the south, the distribution of pilgrims, the pressure of pilgrims will be distributed over a larger area.
Ma'am, one question over here from my side. Like
Yes.
considering this whole development, whatever is happening, there is, as you already explained right now, there is a strong tourist circuit over here. Now,
Yes.
if we really, is it really being looked at as an architecture project or maximum to the scale of urban design? But if you really try to understand the ripple effect of everything, what is happening, it is more like a tourist-based urban planning circuit. Then they have to narrow down to urban design. That to architecture should have been the approach which should have been followed. So there's somewhere a miss out of a holistic approach towards this whole project is not a very big kind of political gimmicks over here.
I think so. I missed, seeing how these kunds and Saryu riverfront, the tirthas and the ghats, Lakshman Kila will be developed. All the talk is, first of all, just concentrated on Ramjanambhoomi, and then secondly on infrastructure projects.
So it is becoming like a one of another smart city project rather than the really prestigious project, which can be a very strong ecological and tourist, like cultural and ecological kind of whole urban planning project, integrating the tourism demand. And it could have been a very big pull factor worldwide, it could have played. But they're really focused on to just Ram Janmabhoomi, which will not create even a 1 day or 2 day or 3 day kind of program, because it can be a very big pull factor for a economic generation for that whole area. So the different layers of planning which we touch when we plan this whole area as a total miscertain has become a sheer architectural project at an institutional level kind of thing, you can say. But if it would have been seen from a larger perspective, it could have so many layers integrated, because we have to understand that our religious system gives a very strong pull factor to a very big small scale economy, because there is a ripple effect. The moment religion is there, there is a full walawa, there's so many more things associated. So many of things are not even talked about. It is more of that nature ki haan bhi mandir banana, and this political agenda zyada dikh raha hai, rather than understanding the people over there and the cultural system over there and so many other factors. So
Yes,
if the whole
the attention has been concentrated on Ramjanambhoomi Mandir and on infrastructure projects. So yes, it is. Ayodhya can be a smart city like other pilgrim cities under Hriday and Prasad schemes. But the smart city, is it's mostly smart city initiatives are about developing infrastructure, the sewage treatment plants, and road widening schemes. But I think smart city should also be about culture, and it should be a combination of the top down and the bottom up approach, in which we are very sensitive to the scale and to the community. And I think that is really the true definition of smartness, that we respect history and heritage, and community, uh, culture, ecology, history, and myth, as I said.
But the way they are proceeding right now in such a speed manner, are they allowing us any space to get into all those things? Because what we are talking right now, I understand this is how it should have been handled. I understand this should have been handled, but the way, in the pace the development is going on, if we somewhere want to intervene as a citizen of the country, what do you think is the way people should approach? And what you have done, the whole presentation, people, all other think tanks of the country contributed and really come up with a government, that why not something like this than just focusing onto a temple structure?
Well,
What is way ahead?
I think it is up to the to professionals, and academics, and the public to bring to their attention what the significance of Ayodhya is. Things are happening very quickly, and understandably so. It has been, a long time in the making. The temple finally got the go-ahead to be built after years and years of litigation. But then I think there should be a lot more effort on the part of the civil society, and that includes academics, and historians, cultural historians, and heritage specialists, to start thinking and start proposing, and do a lot to do research, on Ayodhya right now, and come up with proposals. So we should be having, competitions and seminars going on. There should be a lot more written on the sacred geography of Ayodhya, and it should be shared, through public media, through newspapers and magazines. I'm not aware of all of this happening, and maybe it is, and I think it should.
My next question was that only I was coming to. Okay, is any such thing happening in our country or not? Because if everybody of us thinking individually within our room, nothing is going to happen over there. The voice needs to be raised so that it gets heard at a right ear. So otherwise we are doing our research on parallel, but when it comes to implementation, it is happening what is the political whims and will. So where do we intersect, and ultimately we see to it that things are doable? Because this is not about this Ayodhya, but even Central Vista or many such mega projects which have become a very prestigious political kind of project. Again, everywhere, even if you go to Central Vista, there is some kind of cultural landscape associated over there in Ayodhya, and many such projects, if you really count at a country level, they are there. We all think tanks at an individual level within our institute or within our premise are talking about it, but getting heard to a right ear so that whatever we are researching and doing doesn't get into implementation. There is a total miss out over there. So what as we together or collaboratively can do, because it is very good we are thinking on those lines, but when it comes to implementation, our work gets left into papers only, and what is happening is just political. So are we working somewhere to integrate our thought process into the political whims, and literally going to the knowledge building of those politicians to make them understand, okay, you want to do something like this, go ahead, do it, but this is how it should have been done. You do what you want to do, but this is how it can be done. So how? I just want to understand, how we think tank can really be approachable to these political people so that we help them out. It is not about every time the paid services, but even we can really contribute.
I'm sorry, it's not for me to answer this question. I think it is for you living in India and, being part of, academia, civil society. I'm quite sure that this would have an impact. Why don't you have a studio on Ayodhya? Why don't you take your students there? Why don't you ask why don't you ask for a seminar? Why don't you publish on the topic? I think India is a democracy. It's got a free press. It's got many organizations. It's got many vocal people who can make their presence and voice heard. The recent issue of Landscape Journal has carried articles by some really well-known architects and by organizations such as Intac. On what the future of the Central Vista should be. And I think for Ramjanambhoomi, which is, I think, the single most important site in India today, there should be a lot more attention being paid to what is happening there and what should happen there.
Ma'am, in your journey, all these years, have you come across one such place where this was possible through some interventions by think tank, which can guide many of the people right now over here? So maybe we can adapt some kind of journey as an institutions together to raise a voice, just a guidance from you, because you had been into this field. So you might be knowing those kind of methodologies that have been adapted and successfully implemented also. The scale is not important, but the voice was heard, and some successful examples of these kind of thing, have you come across?
Well, the absence of successful examples in the past doesn't mean that we should stop trying.
No, I agree. I am not saying that there is not, but some trial was done. To what extent it succeeded was fine. But I'm just asking from your knowledge, okay, have you come across such, or we have to hear, because we are thinking that yes, what we teach in the classroom is quite a lot, but when it comes to reality on the side, things are very different. So if we want to bridge that gap between what is practice and what is academia, and we want to really teach our children not only how to design, but even how to see to it that things are being done on the side, because there is a very big, at least at urban level. In architecture, it is okay, but when we come to the urban projects or projects like this, yes, politics plays a very vital role.
I'm sorry, I think you should let other people also ask questions. Now there is the Namami Gange project, and now I've done work on Varanasi riverfront, and many riverfronts now are in India are receiving a lot of attention largely as a result of public pressure. Maybe there are other questions. Other people would like to ask questions.
Ma'am, hello, this is Harsh Sharma.
Yes.
Ma'am, so my question is a bit specific one. We have seen this statue culture coming up in a recent time, and it has been shown to us that they are more socio-economically viable.
Yes.
So do you think as a conservationist, it's a step towards cultural conservation, or it is more of a one-upmanship kind of a zeal that is pushing people to come up with this statue thing, that today we have the largest statue, tomorrow someone else would have a larger statue. So are they like really socio-economically viable projects, or is it is just of a political step towards it?
Well, I don't quite understand the statue mania. I know there's going to be a very tall statue of Ram on the Saryu riverfront, and it started off, I think, with Hanuman and Shiva statues in many cities, and now we have the Sardar Patel statue, and that is a political gesture. Mayavati, I've researched, Mayavati parks in Lucknow, and they're full of statues. And this is very peculiarly Indian, this mania for statues, and it is building these statues and getting land around them and making them as parks is a way, I think, to make a statement, and but you could also say it is a way to bring land into the public domain.
Because often we have seen that this kind of projects are like very maybe primarily compared with other kind of privatized project like healthcare and education. So do you think it is how it should be compared, or they are like actually socio-economically viable, that it brings in the tourism, the economy for India, that we can put it in a higher priority than the other projects?
Well, I think public spaces and well-maintained public spaces are very important because they support the public realm. So cities definitely need more parks. But I would think that we need a better distribution of small parks across the city rather than large parks with large statues. I mean, this is a cultural issue. I mean, this fascination with statues. I don't really see it in other cultures, and I'm not sure why India is so fascinated with building statues.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, ma'am. Next question is like initially you have shown Rama and Path. I mean, the Ram followed the whole from Ayodhya till Sri Lanka. So, in the continuation of question, who Meera raised the question. So, how can we link all these landscaping? So, it's a big way. It's a big route from Ayodhya till down south. So, is it a good way where we can, you know, connect all these cultural landscape in India so that we can narrate the story for the future generation? Because somehow when we visit any other places, for example in MP or Maharashtra, so everyone is saying कि राम यहाँ पर आए थे तो it is always be nice to create one route where, and that could be more narrative, and we can connect all the different landscaping. That is a big route, and where this would be it could be a more tourist I mean obviously tourist impact as well, but we can know what is the actual route he took at that time.
Well, Valmiki's Ramayana describes a number of landscapes, and they are, they show an extraordinary familiarity with the subcontinent, and it's quite amazing that he's able to describe in such detail Dankaranya and Panchvati, Godavari, and the Ram Setu, Lanka, and so on. As a historic process, the spreading of Ram Katha all over the subcontinent and the incorporation of more sites is a process. It's been a long process, and there's no harm in it. I mean, it doesn't really matter whether Ram actually visited all those sites or not. What matters is that people believed, that they were graced, by Ram, Sita, and Lakshman's presence. So in a way, when you look at the geography of India, you see it is connected by sacred sites, by the Char Dhams, by the Saptpuri. And there is what Diana Egg calls a duplication process. The whole is duplicated in the part. So, and any given auspicious occasion, all the tirthas will come into one place. In Varanasi, Saryu is the most sacred rivers, and so on, and all the tirthas of the world come to Ayodhya. So this spatial transposition and duplication of the whole into individual sites. Again, this is a characteristic of the Indic way of thinking. The whole contained in parts, and so that is why in these 69 acres, I think we can represent the entire geography of India or the subcontinent. And yes, it would be like a theme park, no doubt. The story can be told, in iconography, in friezes and murals, in pavilions, in walls. And I think that would be quite interesting. So this is not to push, a Hindutva agenda. It is to actually draw attention to the fact that there is the geography of sacred India, and that is not just the nation India, but it is India as linked, as Diana X says, by the movement of pilgrims.
Yeah, thank you.
And the sites they visit.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Good morning, madam. Myself Vijay Sutha. I just want to ask I would like to just try to understand. We all are aware about that thing. This particular place is a very strong cultural impact as a place also and as a site also. So I just want to understand whatever process which you have done, whatever process which you have shown in this particular presentation. So how do you convert that strong impact into the landscape? So in that process, would you like to share some of the difficulty which you have faced during the process, and you think that it can be a good point or as an experience? So I just want to ask you, can you share some of the points which you feel you should have to share with us, and we can learn from that during this whole process which you have done,
Okay,
or
so
some of the difficulty which you have find it out.
okay, so this is for me, this is an academic project, a labor of love. Uh, um, my family my parents were very devout, and my father was a great follower of Ramchandra. And so I visited Ayodhya in the 90s a few times. But in 2018, I made a number of trips, at least 3 trips, and I did a design workshop with BNCA College, Pune. So for 3 days, we went around Ayodhya, and the LSR Rahija School of Architecture students also were there. And that is how we came up, with this idea that we have to really do planning in Ayodhya with a focus on sacred sites on the Punj of Ayodhya and on the Saryu River front. Now, we also interviewed pilgrims and the sadhus and residents. And as I was saying before, we found out that there's a lot more to Ayodhya than just Ramjanambhoomi, especially Hanuman Gadi and Shiva's abode, Nageshwar Nath Temple. So far, this mapping of sacred sites and speculating on the future of Ramjanambhoomi. These are kind of academic exercises, you could say, and through these, I wanted to raise the point, about sacred geography of Ayodhya as being a very important component of planning. And I'm hoping that other schools and architecture design firms, landscape design firms will take this up as a challenge, and perhaps there could be a competition to design the landscape of Ramjanambhoomi. They might, as I said before, there might be seminars that could be organized in which we could ask heritage conservationists and heritage professionals, along with engineers who are responsible for infrastructure development, along with architects, and also the heads of different mutts, the saints of Ayodhya, and together try to think out how we can really conserve the heritage through landscape design and through planning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really a very useful and learning session for us. And now I would like to request our principal, Madam Jyoti Gill, Architect Jyoti Gill, for the vote of thanks.
Good morning, all. It's my privilege to offer thanks on this occasion of Transgenic Thursday, so 13 on the landscape of India. Ma'am, first of all, I'd really like to personally thank you on the various agendas which you have really patiently answered, because you have really come up with bit complex questions, I understand. and very happy to know about how you have gone out of the way to create this academic program for an awareness level, and helping us to understand that things can be thought way beyond than what it has been thinking politically. So this is really a great exposure to our students, because we really think between the lines, whatever we are, it has been defined. So thinking beyond is another way of approach which academia really needs to focus on to, and we as a institute will also like to integrate this kind of approach in many of the academic programs what we are working on. It is a good suggestion by you that we should integrate, as suggested by you, into our studios, so that these kind of projects can be challenged, not only by just talking about it, but also coming up with an alternative proposal which can be thrown in front of government. So agreed, we will surely take up your idea and will try to implement it, and wherever we'll be stuck up, we'll be surely getting back to you on this thing. Thank you, ma'am, for this thing particularly. It was really enlightening on this issue. Okay, so on behalf of complete team of APIG, working towards this knowledge series, ma'am, we have got this continuous knowledge series happening every Thursday. So our complete team is working day and night beyond identifying the good people to have this audience, and among this August audience, we're lucky to have you also along with us. So on behalf of complete team APID and people from fraternity and students, a big thanks to you for enlightening us through your poetic description of a cultural integration of landscape, overlaid by mythological facts of landscape. The whole idea of presenting this has really enlightened the students to see beyond just the building, but how the context also plays a very vital role on the formulation of new cultural system which is formulated by this. So thanks again on this issue, and we would really like to acknowledge the way you have simplistically enlighten us in your presentation, and even not only how presented, but the presentation methodology was also excellent, very easily understandable by students, so they will get an idea about the presentation skills also from your presentation. How artificial environment, when integrated with natural and cultural landscape, can do a value addition to the whole area, because students are doing urban studio right now, many other studios, so maybe they'll be having some takeaway from this to integrate into their studios. So we all are inspired by what you have shared as a knowledge system and motivate our generation next. So we'll really take up all the kind of suggestions you have given. Thank you very much on this whole presentation.
A pleasure, ma'am. Okay. We'll meet again.
Surely, ma'am. We look forward when you come down to India. Most welcome to our college.
All right. Thanks again. Bye-bye.